Hi, I'm Rich Baker from Rollin' and Riches, and this is Improv Breakdown.
Someone clicks their video on by accident and they're like sitting there and they like pressed it. It's like, oh no, a ghost or whatever. I don't know. So it's
Yes.
What?
Turn on the microphone.
You asked for it.
Yeah.
This is gorgeous.
Me?
Get in the lab.
Well, welcome to the Improv Breakdown. My guest today is performer instructor out of San Diego, California. She has taught her workshops Vanessa's Vulnerable Workout and Have Fun with Anyone to improvisers all over the world, and most recently in January with the Everybody Get In Here Improv Fest put on by the Improv Boost. She's been featured on Paul Valancourt's Improv Tip, the She Shed Comedy Podcast, the Improv Informer, and Jay Suko's 10 Minutes with. Use her own words. She enjoys helping students and performers find honesty in the things they often dislike about themselves and find better connections to each other. She's a delight off stage as much as on. I'm honored to have with me Vanessa Anton. Thank you so much for being on the Breakdown.
Well, thank you. Did I really say those things?
It's on your website.
That's like a nice person. That's like really, it's a nice thing for me to say. I'm just kidding. No, I really feel that.
I had someone quote me back to me recently from something from my book, and they were like, when you said this, and I was like, I'm pretty smart.
Like, that sounds so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I truly feel that. I'm just being weird. I'm awkward.
An improviser who's weird and awkward? I've never heard of it before.
I know.
But at one point in your life, Vanessa, you weren't an improviser, and how did you become one?
Oh, that's such a great question. I feel like, and I've got a lot of people say this, but I feel like I always was in some way, which seems so cliche, because like I would spend a lot of time as a child alone, and so all I did in my room was I made plays, and I made shows, and I was always by myself, and there was just people all around. So big imagination, I wrote stories. And I was always a theater kid, so I've always been into theater. I majored in it in college. In high school, I was president of the Thespians, and we did all kinds of stuff. So it was always a thing. I was always into theater, and I always wanted to perform or do whatever. But I didn't get into improv because when I was in college, I was a stage manager. That was like one of my. It was like general emphasis, and then I did a lot of stage managing. So everything when you're stage managing is like planned to the T, and so improv was terrifying. But because everything is just like kept, and I also didn't like stage managing. I don't know why I did it, but I did it. I thought it was cool to see a production come together, but really it was extremely stressful. And when I started doing improv, I went through a divorce, so that was a thing. And it was really horrible. It was just a very weird time in my life. And I thought, I want to do a thing that's totally different than something I've done in a long time. Like, I just want to take a class. I thought about belly dancing. I thought about some other things. And then I was like, I'm going to take an improv class. And I started doing
belly
that.
dancing, improv. Ooh.
I know. And I just remember after a really hard period of time, I laughed. I hadn't laughed like that with strangers in a long time, like just laughing hysterically with people I never met and coming out each night and just being like, this is amazing. And so I just continued from there.
Nice. Yeah.
It's a long answer.
No, I love it because, you know, it's I've been doing improv for so long, I forget that there's a lot of people who just don't laugh near as much as we do.
No.
Yeah.
I know. And that, like, it's the kind of laughter that I experience that's just like the uncontrollable. Like, you're just like, your stomach hurts and you're just like, and I just hadn't acted like that in front of people in a while. Like, it was just so freeing and fun. I love it. Yeah. So I was hooked.
Yeah. All right. Great. So you took a class on like, maybe I'll take this, maybe I'll take that. And you took the class that hooked you.
Yes, I did. And and there's like a couple friends. Like, I have one good friend that I found in that class, and we're still good friends to this day. And that was like, 12 years ago or something like that. So it's like, but I do remember in college there would be improv in our acting classes. So it was like, but there wasn't like an improv group or troupe which my college has now. I'm like, where were you when I was there? But they weren't there. So I missed out. I wish I had done it in college. That I would have had so much fun.
Yeah. I go to college improv. So what was it like, once improv entered your life, like what was it like developing yourself as a performer, finding your identity, your voice?
It was terrifying. So I feel like everything I do is terrifying. It was a lot of short form. That theater was short form, and so everything was fun and goofy. And then it was like impossible to get on their team. So I really didn't know, like, it just felt, so I was just going to keep taking classes to pay to perform, because then you get like a final show and people come and see you. And I was like, that's how I'll get a show. I'll just spend $400 on a class. And then and so I didn't, and San Diego wasn't a big scene at that time. And so I think I found out from somebody that there were some auditions, and it was the team that I ended up joining, and they were very silly and almost like too blue, but we had so much fun. It was the kind of team that you like go to brunch with, you go to movies, like you just hang out with all the time. You become a family. And I was so nervous. I remember my voice, one of the guys would always say, make sure you project in the show. And I'm like, I'm so quiet. I'm not good enough. I'm terrible. And I would always get like the smaller things. I didn't get to do the big things. And then I think I did something really fun and silly. And I feel like I impressed this person. And then I was able to do some of the bigger things in other shows. And I started like coming into my own. But in that, and then we started learning about long form. And I was like, oh, now I'm nervous again. So every time I would find like a little bit of confidence in some part of it, there was like another new thing which is like life. So as soon as you're like, I feel better, some other terrifying thing knocks you down and you're like, oh crap. So that's how the journey has been. It's been like that. But,
is it still like that? Is it still new terrifying things?
Oh, for sure. I think so, because of like this whole COVID pandemic, like all of the things, like it super knocked me down in a way that, you don't expect. Nobody expects. Everyone's got their story.
Yeah.
And I'm like, girl, don't complain. You're doing fine. You're able to eat and you have a job and all that stuff. But my creative life suffered a lot because I just, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to deal with this. So I feel like much of 2020, I was mostly just taking classes because I was trying to figure out like how to get on this horse and keep going with this new normal or whatever we've got going on.
Yeah.
So I've been like trying to get my footing again in this new.
How's it been? Like what has been the adaptation that you've seen so far for yourself?
Well, I've definitely and I think all the places that I took classes from, I just dove right in. I just went crazy with drop-ins through the nursery in London, a lot of classes overseas, Barcelona improv group, because it was like, ooh, I can play with people from overseas. I can't go there, but I can play with them. So I started that immediately. And then I started doing some coaching with some teams, and I wanted to provide new, fresh stuff for them. So I was like, well, I better keep taking these classes. Because I feel like if you're providing a space for people to learn and grow, you can't just be like, I know everything. You have to keep learning and growing. So that for me is some way that I could stay in touch with it. But I feel like on my own, because the organization that I normally work with, they kind of took a break through COVID. And so they still have been. And so I sort of didn't know, like, I felt like a lost little lamb. I was like, where do I go? Who do I align with? Like what theater? Like what team? So I just kind of like found my little footing. I'm still finding it. I don't know what I'm doing half the time.
Well, I mean, isn't that's why we do improv, right? Is we like not knowing what we're doing.
Yes. And what I loved about improv so much is that I could get rid of all the stage management binders of life, like there was no script, I didn't have to memorize anything. I was just like all that stuff, and I still have those stage management binders. I don't know why, but it was so amazing and freeing to like not have that kind of stuff. I'm a little bit of a hoarder, so it's nice not to have stuff. Like as you play, you're free. It's an open and I'm not a dirty hoarder. Like I don't live with like, you're not going to find me dead in here with like stacks of, it's very neat, but I have a lot of things.
I swear the more you talk, the more I'm like, oh, we're more alike than I realized.
I collect, yeah. I get excited about shoes. I buy a lot of it. I get, this one type of shirt. Then I'm like, I need more of that same shirt. Like I have this shirt in like 10 colors or whatever. So
nice.
I'm
very fashionable.
yeah.
Okay, so thinking back to when, and I know you're still taking classes now, but like before when you were still more of a student than a performer, was there any lessons that you remember learning that at some point in your journey as a performer you had to let those go because you're like, hey, this thing that I was taught just isn't working for me?
Great question. Let me tell you about my things while I think about. No, just kidding. How many puzzles do you think I have? I bought a lot this year. I feel like there's so much of that because I feel like so good. Well, I feel like there's a lot of things, like you learn the rules in improv as a newbie, no questions, this, that, and the other thing. Know all kinds of things.
Sure.
And then you realize that there are some great scenes and moments that do work, that are amazing. Or you go to somewhere like The Annoyance and I did 2 different intensives there, and I would have been terrified if I did it at the beginning, which I know they say that that's a good place to start, but I was glad that I went after I had already had a lot of time in improv because I felt like I could handle, I don't know, it's a lot to like get this information after you're learning this information and then put it all together. But yeah. I loved the freedom of just like letting some of that go, and you can still have great connections with people. You can ask questions or just different kinds of questions. You can not have a relationship that you've stated, but still have a beautiful connection that people are super mesmerized by in a totally different way. So I think stuff like that has been really important and cool to me.
Yeah, I feel like as an improv instructor, my number one like thing is to like try and chip away what I consider to be like unnecessary stuff that previous instructors and coaches have put on to students.
Yeah, and I love it when teachers say, I feel like really good and lovely teachers would say this. Like, I'll give a shout out to Carla Kikowski, who's a beautiful, wonderful person. We'll just say, like, these are tools. You can use them. They may work for you. It may not always, but this is something you can try if you're having a challenge. And I think that's lovely. If people are like, this is the only way, then it's like, but I remember thinking, like, this is the only way. I will only do it that way. But you realize, no, that's not. There's different ways. We're all different.
I feel like almost any rigidity that people try and put on improv never works. Right?
Yeah.
You can't do this, gotta do this. It's like this, it never holds up, over time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. On the opposite end of that, what are some lessons that you learned that you have stuck with? You're like, oh, I'll never forget when such and such teacher said this, and this has helped me throughout my whole thing, that kind of stuff.
I have a favorite exercise. I think it was even in my tips, my Paul Valancourt tips, which Paul is another lovely and amazing human. So I had always heard about Mark Sutton when I would learn in improv, and Pam Victor also talked about him, and he's the one that said, like, no one leaves the theater talking about it. I wonder if they ever fix that bike or whatever, like, the teachers would quote that. And Pam Victor did one of his exercises, which I loved, and then when I went to do the Annoyance intensive my first time, he was our first day teacher, and I was like, what? This is crazy. And I guess he doesn't teach a lot of improv anymore, except for like maybe for businesses and stuff like that. I'm not sure now. This was a few years ago. Yeah. But and then I got to do the exercise. I was like so excited, and it's an exercise that I use a lot, and I find a lot of value to it. But it's where you stop the scene early on and ask both people, like maybe 20 or 30 seconds in, ask both people what their deal is, find out what their like, how are you feeling this dynamic? Make a statement, and then you make them only do that statement for the rest of the scene while they're doing dishes or whatever they're doing, and then and then you do it again, and then add more dialogue. But it's like finding that like purpose for yourself that's authentic to that performer with their partner. It has been so beautiful to see people sort of like think about it, find the purpose, use it, see them have like epiphanies, and I'm just like, this is gorgeous. And people are like, I'm only going to say that one line, and I'm like, yes, just say the one line and see what happens, and then change your tone. Even if you think you can only go in one direction with that line, see what happens if you change like a way that you say a word, or you change and people are like, like, it's just beautiful. So that's something that I use a lot, and I love to see the epiphanies that come from seeing that.
Oh, that's great.
Done. But I remember I was so excited when he was my first teacher. I was like, oh, the annoyance! I was so excited. Oh, I've never been to Chicago, and it was just like,
I love it. I love it.
Good feeling.
So when you stepped into that first class, you probably didn't think that at one point you were going to be teaching improv. How did teaching improv come into play?
Oh, well, let's see. I don't know that I did. That's so funny. I don't know if I ever saw myself doing it, but I think it came from, I was doing a lot of stuff with Finest City Improv, which is where I first met you, when you came to one of the festivals, maybe like 2013 or 14. I mean, it was pretty
probably
early.
2014, 2015, something like that.
Yeah. And so I just remember starting to do like drop-in workshops, and because they were having a lot of their regular players do that. And then I started doing it also at UCSD. I worked for recreation and sports facilities, and I did it for a recreation class for like an hour. It was and I would do these games, and I was terrified, and it was just college students. Sometimes only 3 would show up. People didn't take it very seriously. Yeah. But there are some people that I've met that I still know, or that have continued from those recreation classes, that have continued, and they were in like college improv troupes, or they continued on, or I'm seeing them in LA playing and like doing stuff with like the Ruby or whatever, and I'm like, that's so cool.
Wow.
So some people didn't take it seriously, but some people really did, and they were really awesome. So I think I was terrified. I would like get on the couch and like just fetal position and be like, I'm horrible, like the major like imposter syndrome to like times 100.
Yeah.
Get like stomach aches, and then I think what has helped me is just realizing that it's about sharing what I've seen. Because at this point, I'd already started traveling to improv camps and meeting people around the country, and like seeing how people do it in different places. And so it's like, these are new people that are just experiencing improv for the first time. They don't know that there's a great theater in Philadelphia, or that they don't know. So I can just help them learn about other styles and then also just about human connection. I can help them also feel better about themselves. There's a lot of layers to this, but what it became about for me was helping people to see their weaknesses and realize that they're pretty great strengths. And that's
nice.
Like all that. That's my long way of getting to that last part.
Oh, I love it. So you said that you started with teaching drop-ins. Do you remember that first drop-in? Like,
yes.
Is it like a big deal?
Yes. I remember that they were mostly high school students. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it because they were very, theater kids. Like, they had the energy where they were just like so gregarious. And I had this one exercise that I think I got from Jamie Moyer at camp. And Jamie is another amazing person. Oh, yeah. And I thought this will probably only take like 15 minutes. And it was an object work thing where you could like see how you could take it into so many different ideas. Like, if you see someone doing this, what are all the things they could be doing? And it was mostly high school students and then a bunch of other people. And they were so gregarious and so outgoing. And they took this exercise, and it was like groups were doing things, and I was just like, oh my God, this is going. And it was a little out of control, but super fun. And then later I ended up going to camp with one of those guys at Yosemite. And I think he's in LA. He went to school in Ireland. And the high school team that he was from, I ended up coaching a couple years ago, and I saw his name on the wall, and I'm like, this is where he went. Like,
wow.
They have a big improv team. So I remember it was so fun, and I was worried the time wouldn't go by, like that I would be like, but they were so, like, it flew, and they were so wild and fun. And I was like, these are 17-year-olds, like, what is happening? But it was really fun. And it was like old soul high school kids that were really wacky, but also very woke.
Wow.
They were great. Yeah, it was really fun.
I had the privilege of teaching high school kids, and I have the same kind of, in Illinois at one point that was just like that. Of like, I know that these kids are much younger than me, but they seem more mature than I was when I was where they are.
Yeah. So that was my first drop-in. It was terrifying and hilarious and fun.
Nice. I'm sensing that's the theme, Vanessa. There are a lot of terrifying things.
Yeah, I feel like most people, or maybe many people, could have done what I've done, like, maybe 5 years ago. Like, because maybe they weren't as terrified. Like, my terrifying feelings and anxieties hold me back to where I'll have an idea for, like, a year instead of where someone might have it for, like, a week and act on it. And, like, I did a solo show, and it took me, like, 5 years to think about it. So, but I finally did it. So, yeah.
So, do you use the techniques of, you said, like, you want to help people realize that their weaknesses are actually their strengths. Like, do you do that, like, or you reflect that on yourself? Like, maybe it takes me 5 years, but it's my strength because I'm so thorough about it or something like that?
Yeah, I think what I realized, because a lot of people will tell me you're so hard on yourself, the advice that people tell me is what I, like, then find myself telling others. And so I think I see people doubting themselves, and I think they're amazing. So I'm like, no, you're amazing. Like, don't you realize? And so what I do in some workshops, when I do the vulnerable workshops, and also sometimes in the Have Fun With Anyone, is that I turn the stuff that they're most worried about, I have them face it and do a scene about what they don't like about themselves or whatever. Like, I did one at the Torch in Phoenix several years ago, and there was someone that felt that his responses to things were, like, too boring. Like, he's like, I'm just not really that exciting of a person. And I was like, well, why don't you just use that? Like, don't try to be something you're not if you feel super inauthentic. I don't know about it, or disingenuous. And so I remember someone was like watching. So I emailed people ahead of time, got the responses, and then I wrote out little challenges for people.
Oh,
and
nice.
so I had him just respond in his, like, he's super just a low key person. I had him just respond like that, and someone was like, look at this waterfall, it's amazing. And he was just like, he didn't want to be like that. Like, he didn't feel, so he was just like, yeah, it's cool. And like, everyone laughed because it was so funny that he was just like, and it was coming from himself. So I was like, just channel, if you don't know what else to do, just do what you do what you know till you find ways to play other characters or whatever. And it was so amazing. Like, it turned into a really personal scene about a friend that likes one thing and a friend that he drags this friend along and he's sorry. And it was, rather than being like, we're too excited and, like, just nothing. And that kid was just like, hey, this was fun. I don't know.
You bring such a gift to people by doing that. And to ask people for information ahead of time and put in the work, to do something like that, to individualize it. I mean, what a gift that you give your students.
That's my favorite thing. Like, I'm like, why not try and, like, make it more personal so that it's worth more of their time. My biggest fear is, like, wasting someone's time. And I'm sure there's been someone in my workshop that's like, that was dumb or whatever. But at least if I can try as much as I possibly can to make it worthwhile. So I feel like if I haven't heard from anyone in a while, like, I'm super empathetic to where I can feel, even on Zoom, if I can feel like someone's been quiet, or I'm like, how are you doing? Do you hate me? No. But I want to hear them. I want to get them in a scene. I want to, like, I I want to get people involved. Yeah.
I love that song. And I mean, again, I just, like, the more you talk, I'm like, damn it, get out of my head. Like, was the same. Like, I think I'm maybe too sensitive and sometimes go, is this person not liking it? They probably are liking it fine, but I'm like, I don't know, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I've had some issue. You know, the hardest part is when someone says something that's kind of a little off, and we have to have like a talk about it in the class. Like maybe like how can that affect? And then maybe that person ended up a little upset afterwards or took it personally, and I have to like. But it's like something we had to talk about because it was kind of, you know. Yeah. But then I'll be like thinking about that person, like, gosh, I feel so bad. Like, but we had to do it, so I take a lot of it home with me. I mean, I'm already home now, but I take a lot of it on a lot of the. And if we would do a student show and someone wasn't happy with their show, it used to be a lot worse. I would get really sad for them, like, and then it just became like I wanted students to have a good show. I didn't care about mine. Like if I had a shitty show, I was like whatever. But yeah. I wanted them to feel good. Yeah, such a little codependent.
Caring teacher. Like,
is it codependent? I don't know. I can't tell. How to be not codependent in improv.
I'm going to call it caring. How about that?
Thank you. There's a C.
Oh my goodness. So you've already talked about it a little bit, but your two workshops that you talk about on your website, Vanessa's Vulnerable Workout, when did that start?
That started, oh geez, when did I first? So it came, I remember at Fight City Improv, they were like, do a master class, like in whatever you want or whatever. And I was like, I don't know what I do good at, you know, whatever. I'm terrible. I don't do forms. I don't know Harry Potter. I don't have like a theme show or whatever. And so what I started to realize is that what I really care about is like individual people and like them just finding their gift or whatever. And so I couldn't think of the first name. And so it was like your weakness is your strength. I think it was my first workshop there for masterclass. And then I started like changing it a little more and more. And then I was like, wait, I think this is what it is. It's a vulnerable, and then I made it Vanessa's Vulnerable Workout because I liked the V sound. And then I'm like, we're going to just make it sound kind of fun and not like we're going to cry all the time. And I did have to kind of like, some people like, I did it at camp. I did it at Improv Utopia, which was like a dream to teach at camp. I did an elective at East Camp in 2019.
Nice.
And I remember there's a couple people that at like theaters or at places that I've taken it, and I think Nick asked me this. Nick is another beautiful human. He was like, is this going to be like a triggering workshop? Or are people going to have to like talk about their past? You know, and I'm like, no. Because then there's like that concern, like,
sure.
The talk of trauma and like we're not therapists, like we're not, and it's like no, we're just playing with stuff that maybe like as humans we might think this is not the best choice, but like how can we be more authentic to ourselves and our characters? And if we're afraid of something, like maybe we should just say it, or if we're nervous, like use that nervousness and put it in your character and just flow with it instead of trying to force yourself to be funny. And they're usually so lovely, like the one at camp, and I did one in New Hampshire in a mill.
In a mill?
An old mill. And it was like snowing outside, like there was a little snow, and I was like, this is a dream come true. And it's just when it's just like there's like a feeling that kind of comes when it's going really well, and people can see that other people are sort of like going into their, going out of their comfort zones a little bit. And then other people feel able to do it as well. And then there are some like tears sometimes, but it's more like out of like gratefulness or like confronting like the fear of your own like nerves and being good enough.
Having like a realization, like an aha moment kind of thing.
Yeah, seeing other people feeling it and then relating to it, and then, that's just lovely. I miss that a lot in person, like just that, like when the room gets really quiet and you're just like, and you don't know what time it is, which is really important as a teacher. You know, like you should know what time it is.
Sure.
or else these exercises you'll go over, which happened in New Hampshire. I think I had my phone somewhere and I was super involved and there was no clock and I was like, I have no idea what time it is. And we went over because we were also, anyway, and they had a show, but it was like, it was beautiful. I digress.
I love it. Well, then your second workshop, Have Fun with Anyone, did that come later?
Yes. And that came because I think with Cornerstone, who I love my Cornerstone friends, I taught their first workshop, which was the vulnerable one, and I did that like a few weeks. So I can do it in a week, or I could do it, like one class, or I could do like a session, or there's sessions or whatever. And they were like, well, why don't you do another one? It's been like a year or something. I was like, I don't know what to do. I suck. And so I came up with this thing of playing with all of this is Susan Messing inspired, because she is just such a spitfire. I love her. I love her idea of like, if you're not having fun, you're the asshole.
Yeah. Right.
So it's like, how can we play with things that are frustrating? And I loved some of the stuff that she would do in her class. Like, she would have all these like wacky things happening, and it's like, okay, this is ridiculous, but how can we make sense of this? How can we make it fun? How can we just so I have people, this is another like interactive thing where like I have people come in, and then to do it on Zoom, I'll have them put stuff in the chat, but I will have them write down things that they don't like in improv, or like certain initiations or styles of play, put it in a bag, and then we'll pick them out, and then like one person will play that against the other, and then they have to like figure out how to like best deal with like constant negations or not listening or the steamroller that has too many ideas. Like, how can you spin it around instead of like freezing and be like, oh, maybe I'll just do this thing, and then we'll discuss it, like what feels more authentic, because everyone's different, like and I think that is so fun, like to just purposefully set up those situations and just like crack up when someone has to be like an over denier or like no initiation, they're just like, and the other person's like, what? So we just kind of play with those things, play with bad improv, and just try to sit in it and make it manageable and try to make it fun. And I always say too, like, you shouldn't accept bad, like, harassing improv. Like, it's not about when people are bad towards, anybody, when they say hateful things, when they're abusive, like, that is a no-no. But if it's just like harmless choices that are made because someone doesn't like have the experience or whatever, how can you play? Yeah, because I'm like, we don't need that. We don't need to play with crappy, mean people. That's not what I'm trying to do. It's just maybe the scene isn't that good, like. Yeah,
I feel like improv at its core it's the only hard and fast rules you can put on it are be a good human, right? So like, as far as moves, anything could work on a given night. But like, if you're not being a human with another human trying to support them, then anything you do could be problematic.
Yeah. So, and that I find really fun. I've started playing with it on virtually a little bit, and playing with like tech issues, like what happens if they freeze? And I saw this in a drop-in last summer with some folks in a nursery class, and another great person, Jules Munns. Do you know him? He's very lovely, and he's a British improviser. And in his class, they were doing a scene, 2 people, and one guy froze, and she just kept going, and it was a relationship, and she was like, you need to, and it was so fun to like. And he had no idea ever what happened with this scene, this guy, because he was frozen, and he never got to he's like, I really wish I saw that scene, but I was frozen the whole time. And she was so great. She used it. She used his frozen, and we were all dying. And so I play with that kind of stuff in the virtual version of the class to just, what happens if the video goes out? Where does the person, what are you going to, like, and we could cut the scene and end it, but why don't we just play with it a little bit and have fun with those awkward moments?
Yeah, it's like, when we were in person, if an ambulance drives by the theater and we all have to stop and, we can't hear ourselves for a second, like, we still have to yes and that. So Zoom having a freeze is just another environment thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or if someone walks in the background, a parent or a child or whatever, like or someone clicks their video on by accident and they're like sitting there and they like pressed it. It's like, oh no, a ghost or whatever. I don't know. So it's fun to just call that out because then everyone feels bad and it's like, oh no, I put my video on, I did this, I didn't like let's just like relax and have a good time.
Yeah, right. Just whatever happens, just play with it, right?
Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff I love.
So you said you've been you took that first improv class. You say 12 years ago?
Yeah, 2009.
Oh wow.
So whatever that is.
Yeah. We don't need to do math here, but I don't want. But since 2009, what have you seen change about the art form in that time?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, just locally. So in my little world here, San Diego scene really grew quite a bit to where there became like 3 theaters, or maybe 4 if I'm even thinking of it right. Teams, enough for people to coach, and enough artists. People were writing sketches and doing this, and I'm doing podcasts and videos and being like a little artistic community, which is really rad. Of course, there's negative sides to that where there's a lot of fallouts and a lot of things because there's so many people. But it was so fun to see that. Of course, the pandemic has changed a lot of stuff. I feel like, and then with the growing of the community, like learning about other communities, going to improv camps, going to festivals and meeting people in other cities, going abroad and meeting people in other countries and seeing what that is like compared to how we do it and all the differences. And I think with the pandemic, there's this overwhelming kind of, like, to me, it feels like the big boss theater is kind of dying, and it's more about like, because so many have closed, and there's also, what's the right word? There's also people there's also theaters that have been shitty to minorities, and so it's like,
and women and disabled people.
Yeah, so many, right. So there's so many problems with that. And so there's a lot, I feel like it's the era of people rising up and being like, we're creating our own thing. And the old tried and true is not necessarily the boss anymore. And people are creating amazing festivals and theaters and shows out of like, from love and what's the word, ambition, and just like all of that. So I feel like that is becoming more important than like, this theater has been there for this many years and I have to learn there, so it feels there's this huge shift, and where people are more respected if they care about others and if they care about all people, and if they're opening and welcome, than being like, this is the only way and you have to pay this much to be here. And so I feel that shift a lot, which is really cool.
Yeah. An author that I love to read calls it the connection economy. Right? It's like, it's not about scarcity, like I have this thing and you have to pay me to get it. It's like, well, the more we share, the more value there is.
Who's the author?
Seth Godin.
Oh, okay.
Highly recommend a ton of his books. I talk about them all the time, but I most recommend The Practice, but we can talk about that all day. Awesome. So do you have any prognostication on where the heck this thing's all going?
Prognostication is beautiful. Do you mean for the whole, or
just anything like what do you think the future of improv might look like? What are you seeing?
I feel like just because of the way it is, there will be like other theaters that form out of the beauty of wanting the community, and then eventually, because it's hard to run theaters, and they're like, those theaters then will become like the oppressive, because there's rules and you can only, and then there's more people that are like, hey, this, so I feel like there's more, but I feel like there's still more community. Like there's people all over the world connecting and creating art and doing things online and shows and connecting more than ever, because that's the way things are right now. That I feel like the Mecca places aren't as important anymore. So I feel like that, to me, is kind of the new direction. But then I feel like there's going to be a lot of new rad theaters in LA, and there's going to be maybe some new things that pop up in Chicago, in New York, and I don't know, and maybe there won't be places as much anymore, but like you rent it as as you have a show,
Yeah.
like, I know that's something that Cornerstone, who I was involved with, it was like, we'll have workshops, rent the space, which is like what UCB used to do. They used to just rent around LA their spaces and then had their show house or whatever. And then they had that beautiful training center. Yeah, so I feel like maybe there's more of that can happen.
Yeah,
As
I mean,
people
Second City
see, like,
started in the back of a Chinese laundry, so like,
yeah,
we
yeah.
can do this anywhere.
Yeah, so I feel like there's that. I feel like eventually, though, it's like, well, we love the theater. It's so fun. We can do this all the time. And then you, like, eventually get back into that cycle. So it's like, how do you keep it, I don't know. It's so the challenge.
So what about for you personally? What do you have on the horizon? Are you looking to write more workshops? What's next for you?
Well, I feel like I've just come out of a huge stupor of 2020 where I've just kind of been in the passenger seat and learning, and I just connected a lot because I didn't know how to handle a lot of what was going on nationally, around the world, all of this stuff going on, harming people, political stuff, like just awful. So I felt like, oh, here's my workshop about having fun. It just didn't feel authentic to me to do a lot of stuff for myself. So I was doing a lot of, but I want to stay connected because I'm at home and I didn't want to get super depressed. So I did a lot of learning and seeing what other people are doing and what matters and what are people connecting with and how can I connect with them and blah, blah, blah. So now I just feel like I'm just getting back out there and like reopening myself to teaching again and getting back sort of like into the world. And my dream before this was to just travel and go to communities and like that's all I want to do. So when it's all over, it's all taken away, and it's like, well, darn it.
Yep.
So I'm like, I can't go anywhere. And I realized that that's such a, it's like a first world problem. Like I have food, I have a job, I'm okay. So just let that go. But that's eventually I want to be able to do that again. Like I'd love to go live somewhere I don't know how I'll afford it. But ideally it would be like, go here, go there. That's what I was doing in small doses before, and now I just want to keep doing it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Because you have a fairly unique perspective, at least of anyone that I know, of having been improv teacher for so long and knowing so much you do, and then now you're exposing yourself to all these different schools of thought from different people all over the world. Has there been any particular thing or a set of things that have been really surprising? Like, wow, I never even thought about this before or anything like that? Or has it been more of like, oh, we're all kind of speaking the same language?
I'll probably like wake up at 3 a.m. and be like, that's the answer! And then I'll be like, can we record? Can we?
Just hit record again. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I'm mostly just really delighted by how you can connect, how this can create connection across so many different cultures and communities. It's just fun to be like on the computer and you're like, there's like 5 time zones represented, or there's this and just see people that they grew up differently. They had different like pop culture references in schools and this, but we're still like sitting here doing a scene or playing a game and connecting. And I think that's really lovely. I always think that I always heard this before, that Americans talk too much. And so like as improvisers, like I see there's a lot of more like silent work, or like maybe more like there's a woman from Sweden that I talked with a few times, and she was trying to find more positive improv because they're like more uplifting, because a lot of it can get really heavy and really like, and I think there's some I learned that maybe we're a little bit more is it like maybe we don't get as like physical or like graphic, like maybe some other areas are like, we're just gonna go like we Americans maybe too wordy and not daring as other places. So I learned some things about that, but
Nice.
Mostly just the connection is really beautiful.
Yeah.
All across the land.
Yeah, right. It's like we're all a bunch of weird, make 'em up weirdos, goofy people in Spain and you know, Japan, doesn't matter. Like wherever you are, they found us weirdos. It's like, hello.
Yeah.
Zip.
Yeah, I know. It's like you can just say that, and 12 different countries are like zap. You know, it's ridiculous. Like even if you know 10 words in English, it's like zip, zap, and zop might be a few of those.
That's our secret international handshake to everyone.
Yeah.
Zip.
Oh, we have an improv show this week at 8. Down the street. The theater's closed, so we're renting a space. Wear a mask.
Oh my goodness. Vanessa, so great to talk to you. Where do you want to send people? If people want more Vanessa in their life, where do they go?
Oh, well, thank you so much. I do have a website.
Yeah.
It's vanessaanton.com. Another thing that's been difficult about this is that I'm not a huge tech person. I love tech, the simplicity of tech. I love using it. But sometimes, like, as far as design and, like, cool things, I'm not as super great at it. So it was something that I started. It's very simple. I add to it on occasion. I have my workshop there in events. And I'm also doing a show online, because who isn't?
Nice.
With a lovely person that I met in Ireland, but she's in Georgia.
Oh.
Her name is Amanda Roundtree. She's really great.
Oh, Amanda. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah. So she reached out, and we're doing a show with a few other folks, I think from Georgia and another state, maybe Louisville. I can't remember. And so I have that on there too. So I'm just doing things, and then I'm just taking classes still and doing workshops, and because I like to connect with people.
I love it. Well, Vanessa, thank you so much for being on the
Thank
breakdown.
you.
It's been just a pure delight. It's been great.
Also, you're such a wonderful, kind person, so I want to thank you for what you bring to the improv sphere. I don't know, sphere, and just the kindness you radiate towards others, because it's important. And I see you. I see you on my computer, but I also see that. Like, it's really cool. So
Thank you so much, Vanessa. That means the world.
Aww.
Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about improv, please put them in the comments below. To get notified about upcoming episodes, subscribe to the Roland and Rich's YouTube channel and click the little bell icon below. Thanks, improvisers, and keep making each other look good.